What do you think of first when you think Gran Turismo? Is it the massive selection of cars, the various races you get into? Perhaps it's one of the many fictional tracks that you find yourself racing on. They've been in the series since its inception, and starting from Gran Turismo 3, they all come with their own logos. But that begs the question, out of the approximately 60 fictional track logos in the series, which one is the best of them all? That's why we're going to rank every fictional track logo in this series by how well they're designed. With our critical eye ready and track logos from nearly every GT game waiting to be ranked, let's kick things off at number 61. There's always gotta be the weakest entry in these kinds of ranking videos, and unfortunately, Super Speedway is that weakest entry. This logo is not good. It seems like whoever was in charge of graphic design at Polyphony just threw some random shapes at a wall and came out with the first semblance of a logo that came to mind, because the whole thing is super messy. You've got this curvy shape with an arrow in between the layers, which does not feel cohesive at all. Add in these filler blocks on either side of the text and the ill-fitting drop shadow on the arrow, and I'm just more confused than anything. What were they cooking with Super Speedway's logo? The next logo is a little better, but still very weak. As much as I like El Capitan as a track, the logo Polyphony made for them leaves a lot to be desired. I can see what they're trying to go for with this vague rock formation design as seen throughout the track's landscape. On top of that, the green design in the background subtly represents Yosemite's forest-themed pines, but this is just not a good way to execute all that. It's pretty weird seeing the somewhat shoddy line work extend outside this circle. Maybe if the logo was just what's in the circle it would be okay, but the green background design does make the whole thing a bit more awkward. Speaking of awkwardness, we've got Northern Isle Speedway. Its logo definitely looks nice at a glance. There's a bold choice of colors in here that's reflected by the trackside decorations and facilities, and the logo also makes use of the oval shape of the track. But there are small details within Northern Isle Speedway's logo that ultimately muddy things up. For example, take the upside down Speedway text. It fits in with the counterclockwise direction of the oval, but it really inhibits the readability of the logo. And why did Waluigi touch up the T in Northern? Weird choices. But number 58 is an interesting one. It's the logo for Grand Canyon Mini Track, which was only featured in GT4 Prologue, but its logo appears in the files for many of the games to come. Essentially, they took the existing Grand Canyon logo, which we'll get to use soon, recolored and resized it slightly, and added Short Track alongside the track outline. Yeah, I don't like this combination. There are so many small details in the existing Grand Canyon logo that make the Mini Tracks logo too busy, and I guess the track outline does make the logo somewhat distinctive, but when the track is shaped like someone took a bite out of a pizza slice at the wrong place, it means almost nothing in the bigger picture. Here's an ultimately pretty forgettable logo at number 57, Swiss Alps. It's got some cool tilted text and what I assume to be mountains or houses at the bottom, but otherwise there isn't much to talk about. I would have liked if the Swiss Alps text was in a more unique font. And for another track debuting in GT3 with another forgettable logo, we've got Test Course. This particular logo for the track only appears in that game, as in GT4 it became part of Driving Park, and the test course itself was replaced by Special Stage Route X from GT5 onwards. But talking about the logo's contents, it's just some generic text on top of this technical testing symbol. It does its job identifying test course, but accomplishes essentially nothing else outside of that. Very bland and boring. The logo for GT3's Complex String shares some design similarities with the previous entry. Both have simple logos decorated with simple text, but where Complex String gets the edge is the main arrow design, which I feel works better than the simple testing symbol for Test Course's logo. The text also has more interesting colors, but both logos are still not that great. And now for everyone's favorite 100% original GT track, totally not based on anything in real life, Côte d'Azur. And its logo, it's fine, there's nothing really to comment on apart from the OK text outline font and slight gradient on the checkered pattern at the bottom. Pretty ho-hum logo if I do say so myself. A lot of the entries in the lower part of the list come from the earlier games, as Polyphony only really locked in for logo design starting in GT Sport. That's how we got all those fictional sponsors. But our next track logo from this era, and the only one for a while, is Fisherman's Ranch. There's a good idea here with the lasso, belt buckle-esque design, and horse, but it all comes together into a logo that looks far too busy. It could definitely use some simplification. I'd also like it if they incorporated more fishing stuff in the logo because, you know, fishermen. Otherwise, it's a logo. It exists. Let's move on. Hey, heard you like birds. Well, you're gonna love Tahiti Circuit's logo from Gran Turismo 3. Look at that bird, and please ignore the lack of anything else of note for this logo. I guess it's nice having this weird frying pan-esque shape with the soothing tropical color scheme, but they really could have focused more on the bird portion of the design. Told you we'd get back to this one. Grand Canyon's logo isn't bad, but there's plenty of things that hold it back from being a good or even great logo. I do like the line work on the canyon part of the design, and the colors of the sunset are pretty nice. Problem is, this design has various small details that can easily get lost or muddied up, like the bird and sun for example. And even more of an issue is the handwritten Tvip text. While it's a nice reference to the actual area in the Grand Canyon National Park, the way it's written and how it's just slapped on there does distract from the main design. So now it's time for Matterhorn, whose logo actually appears in GT5 despite first appearing in GT6. Interesting story about that. It was scrapped in GT5's development and appeared as a completely different track in GT6's full release. But whatever, this video is about its logo. I kinda like the word mark being used, but the actual mountain and clouds are a bit too busy. The clouds especially muddy up the design from afar since they're so thin. And for another track from the PS3 era, we've got Kartspace's logo up next. Technically the Kartspace tracks have two separate logos, but the difference lies solely with the Roman numeral in the top left, so we'll just focus on the kart design. It's a neat design that effectively stylizes a driver in a kart. It's not exactly a masterpiece of graphical design, but it does sort of fit the image of a K1 speed style establishment I create when I think of this track. The logo for our next entry, Tokyo R246, is pretty simple on the surface, just a word mark with some interestingly designed text. The whole thing's mostly inoffensive, but I think the design of the R246 text gives this logo its own unique touch. Otherwise, there's not much to talk about for this logo. Hope you like blue, because this is the fourth blue logo in a row. Ice Arena lies just above Tokyo R246 because while it loses out in the text aspect, it makes up for it with this little tent design that reflects all the tents laid out across the track. Another somewhat simple logo, but it suffices. It's enough to distract me from how much I suck ass at this track. Alright, now it's time for a group of 4 logos that all share a common aspect. I'm of course talking about the logos for the OG special stage tracks, Route 5, Route 7, Route 11, and the Clubman variant of Route 5. They're essentially the same logo, but with small color variations to spice things up. Let's talk about the base logo design first. I'm a fan of the slanted design that the logos go for, and the colored block with the stage text admittedly could work. However, the SS in the logo doesn't blend in all too well, especially with how the block intersects the two S's. Now, let's rank the special stages from worst to best, mainly through their color, though they're all at pretty much the same spot. GT4's Clubman Route 5 logo is the weakest at number 46, solely due to the Clubman text and the fact that it's green instead of purple like its long counterpart. Then we have Route 11 at number 45, since orange doesn't really feel like a special stage color to me. Route 7 is at number 44 due to the green fitting somewhat better, and I think Route 5's purple is the best for the logo, so that's the highest here at number 43. That's not all of the special stages though, we'll get to the one outlier soon. But in the meantime, let's go back to one of the OG tracks, Deep Forest Raceway. There's two variants of the logo, one from GT3 and the other from GT7, so I'll review both at once. Both logos make use of a tree design on the right, which you could say may be too detailed, but I'll let it slide for now. I'll focus on the main difference, which is the presence of the wedge that the tree sits on. This wedge exists in the old logo, but not in the new logo. And personally, I think this wedge justifies the existence of the tree design more, so I picked the GT3 logo as the stronger one overall. Man, it's such a shame that this video is about the track logos and not the tracks themselves, because this next track has got a juicy backstory, so juicy in fact that it got smited from the game it was meant to be in. I'm talking of course about Piazza del Campo, the track that was meant to show up in GT5 with this logo. It's an interesting logo, but I feel like just the cursive here would work better. The way it's combined with the serif font doesn't really strike a chord with me. There's also these little checkered cutouts, but they ultimately distract from the logo rather than add to it. Now, let's return to another OG track, Trowel Mountain. It's another decent logo. Although a bit bland, the track's logo does have some charm to it with the blue and orange color scheme and the mountain at the top right hand corner. It's pretty iconic though, so I can't hate too much. The same can be said for Cape Ring. Although it doesn't have as much history as some of the other tracks here, there's still a vision in this logo. They managed to incorporate ring elements into the logo, which I find fitting. It almost looks like the track's signature spiral, which I suppose is what Polyphony were going for. But while the multicolored text looking as if it's been sliced does sound interesting at first, the way it's executed doesn't look the best. It's especially noticeable on the bottom part of the ring text, where the slight difference in position makes it seem as though the G is actually a Y. Alright, 3 classic era street tracks in a row. Let's start off with number 38, Hong Kong. At a glance, it's a pretty nice logo. I kinda like how the tails and the G's look like bodies of water, which fittingly references the harborside area of the track. Really, my only problem with this logo comes with these squares behind the Hong Kong text that look a little weird when viewed up close. And the second of these 3 street circuits is Seattle Circuit. Unlike the previous few street track logos, it's nice to see that Seattle's logo includes a notable landmark in the Space Needle. There's also a cityscape silhouette in the background. While not the best in terms of logo design, it does assist in hammering home the city motif in this logo. But I don't know, something like a stylized needle or Seahawk or something else Seattle related would work better as a more explicit logo. Because what we have is a good design for something like a shirt, but not really as branding, an issue I think applies to some of the other GT3 logos. Wrapping up the 3 street circuits here is Città d'Aria. The handwritten style logo here fits in nicely with the vibe this track sets up around the streets of Assisi in Italy. There's also this little plant nestled between the text, which I think could work as a major design element, but in the final logo, it's pretty small and gets lost at a distance. It's been a while since we got a logo from the modern era of GT, but at number 35, we've got ourselves another speedway introduced in GT Sport, Broadbean Raceway. The BB design for the logo looks pretty nice, I'll give it that. While the text portion isn't that great, especially the minuscule Broadbean part, this logo works in a vacuum. But there was such a huge missed opportunity with this logo. Look at the shape of this track, how could they have not used it as the B in this logo? That would be hilarious, I'm not even gonna lie. So here's the outlier among all the special stages in Gran Turismo. Unlike the other ones we covered, Special Stage Route X is unique in that not only is it named after a letter rather than a number, unless it's a Roman numeral like Route 10, but it has its own unique logo as well. Route X definitely wins out in the design department. The X design here is more visually appealing and interesting in general. It definitely beats out the cookie cutter design of the other special stages. Although this design isn't perfect, same with the extended part on the R, it's something to gawk at, and the whole logo is leagues better than test courses from GT3. Back on modern GT, here's a somewhat weird logo that I see the vision for, but the execution somewhat brings it down. Circuit de Sainte-Croix's logo has some really nice design elements. It has bold text that clearly states the important part of its name. I also really like the blue squiggly below the text that represents the lakeside nature of the track. Add in some more details and you could probably get a banger logo out of what Santa Claus offers. But then again, there are some weird design choices that bring this logo down to around a low B tier in terms of quality. For one, they repeat the track name in the design. The full name sits on top of the shortened Santa Claus title and it feels awkward in the context of the logo. Plus, this lavender flower, while reflective of the actual flora growing around the circuit, somewhat disrupts the balance of the logo. This track's offering could spring up several places if Polyphony trimmed down the design a bit. We're about to reach the second half of the list, so to commemorate, let's cover Smoky Mountain. It is a bit simple like many of the other GT3 logos, and similar to Tahiti Circuit, its logo essentially boils down to this animal design that appears to be a ram. But unlike Tahiti Circuit's bird, Smoky Mountain's ram actually takes up a sizable portion of the design, which allows it to work better as a logo. Aside from the somewhat generic font in use and the lack of any mountain motifs in this logo, it's an improvement from many of the PS2 era designs before. Hey, Polyphony, quick question, are you trying to get sued for copyright infringement? Because you made this logo for Opera Paris. If you remove the blue circle in Paris, yeah, that's just the Opera browser logo. Okay, that aside, I find the interlocked O's pretty charming. It's almost as if they're lovers in the city of love. The gradient to white does hamper things a bit though, especially since the white appears in different directions between the two O's. The Opera Paris text being in gray also doesn't feel right. The other Tahiti Circuit here, apart from the aptly named Tahiti Circuit, is Tahiti Maze. Tahiti gets some pretty good rep with the Tahiti Maze logo, complete with a Tahiti tree and a rather Tahiti style font for the Tahiti Maze text. Although the Tahiti Maze logo isn't perfect, it's a much needed Tahiti style improvement for the Tahiti logos compared to Tahiti Circuit. Tahiti. Here comes yet another OG track in Autumn Ring. Although its logo is a bit generic, it's got enough elements to make it distinctive. I like the font used here more than the other bog standard GT3 logo fonts. Not to mention, there's a nice color scheme in use with the green text and the arrow design. But I would be remiss if I didn't also mention the Autumn Ring mini logo. It's pretty different, being focused more on the arrow design instead of the text, and it's on par with the main logo. The two strengths and weaknesses cancel each other out. Transitioning into the season immediately after autumn is our next track, GT7's wintry Lake Louise. As someone who's lived in the States her entire life, I can't say too much about the admittedly pretty good maple leaf integration in this logo, so Canadians in the comments, I trust you to do exactly that. Otherwise, the text isn't too bad, and I like the snowflake design in the other blue elements here. So this next one isn't a specific track per se, but rather a collection of tracks under one facility name. From Gran Turismo 4 and technically 5 if you count the karting experience special event, we've got Driving Park, hallowed be its name among the swaths of license tests and coffee breaks. It has a simple logo, but it's pretty effective for what it is. This connected DP design is far more identifiable as that of Driving Park's, mainly down to its aforementioned simplicity. The whole thing is also in a fitting shade of dark green, which works well for the type of driving facility this logo represents. Oh my god guys, look at the little marmot in the Cathedral Rocks logo. The little guy's just such a vibe with this little nonchalant expression, and I love Cathedral Rocks' logo for that. That aside, I unironically kinda like this logo. It's definitely the better of the two Yosemite track logos. It's also technically one of 3 logos, as the different trails have different colors. For me, the trail 1 green works best. Otherwise, there's still the awkward line work at the bottom. I still don't really like the lines extending out of the circle. Here's another Gran Turismo 4 track in Costa di Amalfi. What really helps this logo reach all the way to the upper half of the list is the choice of colors. The light blue text with the addition of the pinkish flower and leaves really captures my eye. Although the design's a bit crowded, I find this track's logo especially charming. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, here's Rome Circuit, which appears in many GT games, but not 4. So remember when I said that Seattle Circuit's logo could be a stylized Space Needle? Rome's logo does this with its own Coliseum, which works much better as a logo. It's not exactly perfect. The Coliseum design could be simplified a bit, but it's good nonetheless. Alright, let's go back to 4 with the relatively obscure Las Vegas drag strip. No gambling jokes this time, I just want to tell you how fittingly Las Vegas this logo is. These decorative lines, or whatever they're called, on top of the text, the dark background, and the shape of the logo itself really capture the vibe of this Clark County wallet sink. It really would work best as a huge glowing sign on the strip, but sadly, we don't see that on track. Okay, real quick y'all, does anyone know what the f the London logo is meant to represent? Like, is it clouds in the yellow London sky? That's what I saw when I first came across this logo in GT5 Prologue, but that doesn't really seem right. Regardless, this little Street Tracks logo does look nice, even if I have issues deciphering it. I can definitely say that this is a unique logo. It's much unlike anything we've seen so far in this list, and the yellow color does somewhat fit for a city like London. And for a city like Seoul, we've got the logo for Seoul Central. Getting the obvious South Korean symbol out of the way, the design of the text on this logo slaps pretty hard. I'm not too big a fan of the way the E is represented by these squiggles, but the way the text looks like it's been brushed on is very unique and fitting for Seoul Central. Maybe some more South Korean elements would be nice, but what we have is good nonetheless. Starting off, the top 20 portion of the list is a GT classic, Grand Valley, both the modern Highway 1 and the far superior traditional speedway. They both share this general design, a red-green icon with serif text for the track name. I'm also not too sure what this design is meant to represent, but it looks cool, so I'll give it a pass. However, there is a slight difference between the two logos, similar to how differences appeared in Deep Forest's logo when it returned to GT7. The icon in 7's version better utilizes negative space and has the Y in Valley actually hang over the Highway 1 subtitle. So as much as I bemoan the loss of the prestigious speedway feeling for Grand Valley, I must admit that its logo got a pretty good refresh in 7. On the topic of refreshed logos in GT7, the next track is one originating from the PS3 era that also returned in 7. Iger Nordovand first appeared in Gran Turismo HD Concept with this logo featuring a mountain. Although the text was changed by 5 Prologue to reflect the final name of the track, the baseline design elements remain. So let's review the more popular version that appears in that and the other PS3 games first. There are 3 important elements here: the Iger Mountain, Iger Nordovand text, and this flag. They're all good except, wait, the cross on the Swiss flag shouldn't extend to the edges. That means this must be the work of the Danish. But this logo is good for what it is already. With that information in tow, let's see the refreshed logo for 7. Similar to Grand Valley's logo, the mountain design and text have been retooled to utilize negative space, allowing this logo to be more versatile. Plus, the flag looks more original with a checker design and some interesting feathering on the ends. Once again, I'd say the refreshed 7 logo is an improvement. Not many of the fictional tracks in this list use the track outline as part of their logo, despite real-life track logo designers doing that exact thing all the time. There are a few exceptions to this, such as the aforementioned Grand Canyon short track and number 18 Gran Turismo Ohira from GT6. But to be fair, since the track outline is just a stylized GT, they could pretty easily get away with doing this. The outline in question appears as the main focal point of the design in a cool looking red to blue gradient. This combination leads to a pretty strong logo overall, even if it is somewhat cheating with the track outline stuff. stuff. Guys, you will not believe what letter they put in the logo for Alsace. Shockingly, the Alsace logo has a massive A in it. It's in this blue and yellow shield design. If I'm being honest, although this is incredibly simple, I like it. Not only does the shield invoke the French countryside this track resides in, but the blue and yellow make up a fitting color combo that can be seen throughout the track's environment. Maybe some red like in the actual Alsatian flag would work best, but the chosen colors still work on their own. We get to see some really unique designs in these lists, and one of the most unique among this specific pool is Circuito de la Sierra, home of the Sierra Time Rally. The word mark is good enough, especially the Sierra with its overlapping R's, but what I think is one of the most unique aspects of any of the logos here is the butterfly design. It's a wonderfully colorful illustration that combines handmade strokes with vivid colors to create something uniquely organic. Even if it isn't as versatile as an explicit logo, it's aesthetically pleasing enough to where that doesn't really matter. This is a beautiful illustration and it never fails to tickle the artistic side of my brain. Whereas the previous entry got here through artistic merit, our next entry returns to the kind of simplicity that works well for a logo. Apricot Hill's logo, despite not adding its titular fruit into the mix, does have a geometric plant design made in the negative space of 3 shapes. The color of the shapes in question does make up for the lack of apricots in the design. The warm red and orange in use are close enough in color. Plus, the top green wedge covers the hill part of the design on account of its striking resemblance to a grassy hill. This track actually has a pretty good logo, even if it does look simple on the surface. Here comes another OG GT3 logo that I really like, and that's also the best out of all the logos introduced in that game, Midfield Raceway. The elliptical design actually looks good for a logo like Midfield, especially with how the shapes and strokes come together inside the ellipse. My favorite aspect of this logo is definitely the hot pink used as the main color. It's not really a traditional color for track logos like Midfield, so the fact that it does use this pink helps make this logo more unique. If there's one thing I like to see with these fictional logos, it's weird and interesting references. For example, number 13, New York. Getting the bold New York style text out of the way, we've got a neat little blue car with a red trail emanating off it, presumably the tail lights. But if you squint your eyes a bit while looking at it, that's a peak fucking reference if I've ever seen one, assuming it is one at least. Still though, props to Polyphony, I love them for that. Sadly, the next logo doesn't have a peak design reference like New York's, but it's still got something pretty good for what it is. The logo for Circuito de Madrid has a sun design as its focal point, and something that helps make it more unique is the wooden texture on the design. It's a nice addition that provides a break from the endless solid colors and gradients of the logo's previous. That part slaps, but a minor issue with this logo comes with the redundancy of the text. There's both the Madrid text in the Spanish colors and the full name text just below. Polyphony, just pick one or the other. Having both crowds up the whole logo. That small blunder aside, the whole thing's designed mostly well. And hey, if you like the sun, you'll probably also like trees. Lucky for you, Toscana's logo has 3 cypress trees at the focal point of the design. Although a bit lacking in greenery, they're designed with just the right amount of detail to not steal too much attention from the box it resides in. Incorporating a sunny blue sky and a colorful ground, Toscana's logo possesses a very aesthetically pleasing design that works well at any size. I have an issue with these stars in the text, but it's not that bad. However, a more yellowy ground would also help this logo as a complement to the blue sky and for accuracy to the actual Tuscan landscape. And now, it's time for the top 10 best fictional track logos in the series. To kick this prestigious group off at number 10, here's everyone's favorite snow track, Chamonix. And I've gotta admit, Chamonix's logo is surprisingly good actually. The main Chamonix text is wonderfully lively, with the sun as the dot for the eye and the sea and X playing around more with their appearance. This text also has a sort of reflection design, as if it was in a frozen over lake, further emphasizing the cold, snowy environment that this track appears in. All these aspects combine to create a subtle arc in form, a simple shape that allows this logo to win out in the memorability aspect. As a Gran Turismo 5 prologue player, I am completely 100% unbiased for the number 9 pick, High Speed Ring, but I don't even need the bias to tell you that this logo is pretty good actually. Right off the bat, I really like the color combo here. We've seen a lot of dark greens and other basic shades with the other logos on the list, but High Speed Ring's lime green combined with the black in its logo makes up a really distinctive color combo that instantly sets this track apart. But let's address the elephant in the room, High Speed Ring. No, I'm joking obviously. How High Speed Ring integrates this wavy section of track as the S in the logo is uniquely charming, especially with the double stroke of black and green. It reminds me of how Red Bull Ring's logo utilizes the the entire fucking track outline is the G. And I'm almost glad that they left this track out of GT3. I feel as though we wouldn't get such a cool logo if this track was included in that game. Spoiler alert, number 8 is the last track logo here from before GT Sport. It's the logo for George V Paris from Gran Turismo 4. At a glance, we could see that this logo is pretty good, although the space in the V shape almost makes it look like it's saying George IV, which is a completely different monarch. There's more to it that makes up for the small confusion. First off, you might remember the French red and blue in the Opera Paris logo. It's more obvious in George V's logo in this area, and it becomes even more noticeable if you add a white background like on the track signs. But what I found best with this logo is the P in the negative space of the V for Paris. I might be making that up completely, but I still like this logo. From here on out, all the logos listed will be from tracks introduced in Sport and carried over to GT7. And on the topic of 7, here's number 7 on the list, Tokyo Expressway. This logo utilizes 2 overlapping S's as the main selling point, but it executes that simple idea pretty nicely. The blurred ends of the S's help to make this logo feel speedy, which is pretty important for the whole racetrack thing, but this logo also deals with the overlap by utilizing negative space where the 2 S's intersect. The combination of these 2 design aspects create a unique shape that has an ultimately familiar core. Finally, there's a nice shade of green and a cool text design as minor details. Cool logo. At number 6 is a slightly more complicated logo, but one that makes the most out of all its constituent parts. Autodrome Lago Maggiore's logo has plenty of meaning sprinkled throughout, so let's just jump in on the obvious, then take a look at the finer details. First off, the Maggiore text. It's in a nice lowercase cursive that fits with the Italian lakeside vibe of the circuit. There's also the use of green and red elements in the logo that very unsubtly references the Italian national colors, similar to stuff like the Paris logos and many more. But now, let's focus on the multiple meanings of this green design in the logo. It most obviously looks like a mountain, which nicely represents the mountains surrounding the circuit. But part of me also feels like it's a reference to this set of connected curves in the second sector of the track. I might be pulling that out of nowhere, but it's a neat reference for the track logo, and even without it, this logo still has enough good design elements like this dividing line to bring it all the way up here. Polyphony loves their animal motifs. There's a Sierra butterfly, Cathedral Rocks marmot, and now at number 5, the Colorado Springs ram. Smoky Mountain would like to have a word with you on that one, but they won't be able to say much because the ram design Colorado Springs has works way better as a logo. While Smoky Mountain's ram works as an illustration, the more angular outline design that the ram here possesses allows the logo to work much better in a monochromatic situation. And if I'm being honest, the ram here just looks way better, period. The way the line work's set up creates something more artistic and fitting with the Colorado vibe. For one more detail that absolutely blows Smoky Mountain out of the water, the Colorado Springs ram sneakily has the CS initials. The C is placed on the horns of the ram and the S on the neck. Okay, that might be a bit of a stretch, but even still, what a glow up. It's no marmot, but the Rams have got the dub this time. Returning to Italy at number 4 is the Sardinia complex. Their logo utilizes a minimalist sardine design as its main focal point, all above some nice looking text. And by minimalist, I mean it. It's literally made up of 2 shapes, one blue and one orange. Despite the fact that Sardinia's logo is quite possibly the simplest on the list, I'm still oddly attracted to it. Not only does the combination of blue and orange look really nice, but there's still a subtle intertwining of the 2 shapes if we look closely. The head of the sardine has the blue in front and the tail has the orange in front. All that, plus the fact that these shapes still represent a simple sardine in its minimalism, creates something that's incredibly memorable and complex in spite of its surface level simplicity. The podium spot at number 3 brings us back to the Golden State I call home. It's way too far up north for me to lay personal claim on it, but allow me to introduce Blue Moon Bay's logo. As we've seen throughout the top 10 of this list, the reason why I like the modern era track logos more comes with the improved design principles, of course. Readability, memorability, versatility, stuff like that. But true greatness in these logos comes in how major branding and thematic motifs are taken into account in the designs. Blue Moon Bay serves as a great example of all this. Blue, logos all blue, check. Moon, there's a moon in the word mark, check. Bay, the B design looks like crashing waves, check. Although Blue Moon Bay's logo isn't perfect, some of the shapes are a bit harsh and part of the B can get a bit lost in monochromacy, we're starting to see some almost professional levels of design with these logos. Inching ever closer to the top spot is our runner-up at number 2. Remember Driving Park all the way down at number 26? She grew up and appears in modern GT as Kyoto Driving Park. On the surface, it's got a good logo. I like the poppy font choice and and fittingly red color choice, but what I want to focus on specifically is the iconography of the logo. I didn't think much of it at first, I just saw it as a collection of shapes that made up a vaguely interesting form, the arrows maybe hinting towards the driving park portion of the track, but digging deeper into it, I actually discovered that it somewhat resembles the shape of the actual Kyoto prefecture. Just like uncovering the details of the Nicola Pizza delivery logo in my fictional sponsors ranking, this discovery was really fun for me to make. It's another example of Polyphony really knowing what they're doing in terms of creating and theming these logos. Even if the execution isn't perfect with the contrast of harsh shapes and the drop at the bottom, Kyoto Driving Park gives us another certified banger. But now, it's time for number 1, the single best fictional track logo in all of Gran Turismo. To nobody's surprise, it's another modern GT track, a rather infamous one too. This logo takes everything good about the 60 or so previous designs and creates something that could easily pass as a real track logo. You may know which track I'm referring to already, so let's curb the suspense right now. Our number 1 track logo is the one and only Dragon Trail. I mean, no Sherlock, the Dragon Trail complex is one of the highlights of the modern era's tracks, down to the actual design of both layouts, the theming and location, and the general vibe brought on with the modern era. And those strengths all manifest in this logo. Starting off with the text, the technical font used for Dragon Trail is rather appropriate for the high-speed international racing complex this track makes itself out to be. Plus, the international raceway text isn't too distracting and somewhat helps with balancing the icon and text portions of the logo. But where Dragon Trail really takes the cake is its main icon. There's a lot to unpack from this. First off, the dragon. It took me embarrassingly long to notice that this is a stylized dragon. Its head with its long ears is made up by the white stroke. Said stroke also looks vaguely mountain shaped, seemingly as a reference to the massive mountain overlooking the circuit. The orange stroke is what ties everything back together. It represents not only the whiskers of the dragon, but similar to Lago Maggiore, its flowiness may also represent one of the turns on the seaside variant of the track. Maybe it's the infamous death chicane, or the larger and less deadly chicane in the sector before. Regardless of whether it represents a turn or not, the wave in its design is what really sells the elegance of this logo. I cannot glaze this track and its logo enough, and neither can I stop glazing Polyphony's effort as a whole. These fictional tracks are particularly important for a game like Gran Turismo, especially before licensed tracks became more widespread within the series. Polyphony is rather good in this aspect, but the memorability and fun of these tracks aren't solely derived from their racing action. The other factor behind why I and many others still hold these tracks up to high regard is their strong theming and aesthetics. All the varied colors, landscapes, architecture, they all bring something memorable and unique to each individual track that can be enjoyed outside of pure on-track action. The logos we covered make up a critical aspect of this theming. Not only does a logo ground the track in reality by making it seem as if it's an actual place with branding, but it serves as an important visual identifier to quickly encapsulate what makes each track unique at a glance. Although Polyphony hasn't always been the best in this regard, what they've managed to cook up is a reflection of how they've gotten Gran Turismo to succeed as a racing game, their heavy attention to detail and the unique vibe created by the series. It's the secret sauce that brings the games to greatness. So props to you, Polyphony, y'all really know how to make a game worthwhile. There's only one way I can think of to improve on this track record, just add a marmot to every track logo. You can never have too many marmots.